Jay Leno's Garage. Today, something a little bit different. This is called the Birdcage. It is motorcycle art. You know, it's funny, in the last couple of decades, we've really looked more and more to automobiles, motorcycles, tractors, whatever it might be, as artwork. This is something you can ride and drive, but it's still, well, I think it's safer as a piece of art. You know, it's called the Birdcage for obvious reasons, because you all remember the famous Birdcage Maseratis from the 60s that had the frames, the trellis frames, all beautifully made and brazed. This one is an example of that type of work. This is done by a place called Revival Cycles down in Austin, Texas. It's like my favorite motorcycle shop, because the most creative guy. They do restorations. They'll fix your Honda if you want, but they also do just crazy, interesting, fascinating things with motorcycles. They do a show called the Hand-Built Show every year, where folks come from all around the world now, literally, and bring automotive art. Sometimes it's a chopper, sometimes it's something like this. This is reminiscent, I guess, of the famous BMW speed racer bikes, the world record holders of the 1920s and 1930s. Let's meet Alan Stolberg. Alan, you're the founder, the CEO, you're the head bike guy at the shop, whatever you want to call it.
The loudest mouth.
Loudest mouth, whatever you want to call it. This is an example of his creativity. And some real engineering, some real science in this. This predates the new BMW 1800 that just came out,
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so BMW approached us and commissioned us to take their prototype engine, gearbox, and rear end to turn it, or I should say a differential, and turn it into a custom motorcycle to promote what was coming.
Right.
So this was in works for several years before they launched the bike, but things didn't work out because of COVID as far as the launch of the motorcycle.
Sure.
But this was done to kind of tease people as to what was coming. And so when we released it, it was just, wait, something's wrong about the scale. Why? This is a BMW, it's obvious, but what is it? And,
right.
And that was it. It was the big secret. Right?
I know you always seem fascinated by the speed bikes of the 20s and 30s. Whenever I'm down in the shop, everything has that retro vintage feel, which is my favorite era too, because it was, you know, people going 100 miles an hour was considered like 200 today.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say, what I like the most about that era of streamlining, if you will, is that we know they didn't have computers.
Right. And
most of the stuff that was done with string and experimentation on motorcycles at speed, and it created the most beautiful shapes. Now we know aerodynamic cars aren't really the prettiest cars in the world. Right. And so I like to harken back to that era of streamlining. Now, obviously, a lot of this stuff is stylistic much more so than functional.
Well, this looks like, there was a famous motorcycle racer, Eric Feinhorn, as I pronounce it, and he had a helmet that looked like this. It's sort of almost Buck Rogers-y. I mean, we kind of laugh at it.
It would go
now.
like down all the way down his back.
Yeah, but it looks sort of silly in comparison to what we do now. But at the time, it was, I think it's still pretty cool.
It is, and a while ago I heard you hit the nail on the head, which was that this was modeled after the Henne bike, which was a land speed record bike that wasn't talked about a whole lot. There was a period of time where they weren't really talking about what happened during that period. But in the 30s and 40s, he broke the land speed record like 5 or 6 times. Henne as an independent supported by BMW. And 150, 160 miles an hour in the 30s and 40s was really damn fast.
It's fast now.
It's still fast
on a motorcycle.
Yeah. So even the valve covers that we CNC cut and made are absolutely inspired by that. They're not, I told you earlier, the weight of this bike is much lower than the factory bike, but each one of those valve covers weighs like, I don't know, 15 pounds, I think we weighed them. They're really, really heavy because it's just solid aluminum.
Now, on the 1800 motorcycle, is it oil cooled with a radiator?
Yeah, it is an oil cooled.
But you don't have the oil cooler on here. No. So
come on,
you're not going to be crossing the desert.
I told you the cup holder goes here. And the GPS screen with the windscreen. No.
Well, I know that motorcycle, which is their sort of new cruiser, for lack of a better word, weighs close to 900 pounds. What does this weigh with this trellis?
420.
420, really? Yeah. And this has to be 419 of it.
Those valve covers alone.
I mean, I mean, just the whole engine. I mean,
it is really heavy. I mean, yeah, it's 1,800 cc's compared to like an R90/6 of the 70s. It might weigh twice as much.
Right.
But the word on the street is that this motor would take a lot more power, right? Meaning turbo or supercharger.
Right, right.
So the story of the bike was that they sent me this complete running mule, but I was only to use the motor, gearbox, and the rear end. So we started from scratch in CAD and started to build out, what we wanted to do. I knew the scale, the engine's so big. As a designer, the scale of the wheels needed to go up as well. To me, 17s or 18s weren't going to look right. So these are 21-inch wheels.
Yeah, I thought they looked awful.
Yeah, they're huge, but they're the same, right? They're the same size.
And where did you get the tires?
Dunlop. Oh. Dunlop had some pre-prototype stuff on the shelf.
Right.
And I made a phone call and they sent them to us. Anyway.
And you've got a throwback here also.
Yeah.
The hand shifter.
Right.
Where is it?
It ties into a linkage.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, I see. It goes all the way down.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Wow, that's very clever. That's
actually
very
works.
Nice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know if you noticed, but the Hilburn style direct fuel injection.
Right, and of
valves.
course no air cleaning because air was much cleaner back in the 30s.
Of course, it was. Yeah, there wasn't pollution.
Okay. All right.
But the original thought I had was I wanted to put a supercharger on it. Mm-hmm. And BMW didn't like the idea of me taking their brand new motor and putting a supercharger on it.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we had to change directions. And then I chose this titanium frame. I don't know what you would call that, but based on my appreciation for the Birdcage Maseratis and Porsches of the day.
Now this shock here, that's the original geometry to the BMW. So that's their science there.
Right. So, I mean, what happened is after BMW told me I can't do the supercharger, then I stopped talking. And I stopped telling them what I was going to do because the contract said I could do what we wanted to.
It's much easier to apologize and ask permission.
Exactly. Right. So we're trying to come up with the hook. Like, what was the hook going to be? Because we couldn't just build a standard frame. We couldn't just make a standard forks, and it wasn't going to be very interesting or experimental. So Auerbach, chief engineer at Revival, said, "Hey, what if we put a tail lever on it? This is a BMW style tail lever suspension. It's on the modern GS's still to this day."
Now, is this piece, this triangle, is BMW?
Well, no. No, actually no. So the standard R18 is standard fork.
Right, okay.
None of this, so all of this is, when I say it's a tail lever, it's inspired by a tail lever, and it is of that. But none of these pieces, every single piece on this motorcycle is handmade, except for the base of the engine, right, and the gearbox.
And this piece here, these are meant to mimic
the Hine bike.
Yeah, or hydraulic forks.
CNC in-house at Revival. Even these fasteners are titanium.
Yeah. Tell me about building the frame. I mean, obviously there's real science here and there's real computer CAD models and all for strength and.
We did some rough, math on it. We built this all in CAD first to get the geometry and everything right.
Right.
And then we did some rough math on the torsional loads and discovered that in fact titanium tubing, or this isn't even tubing, this is solid titanium, would be more than strong enough with significant less pieces. And forgive me, it's been 2 years now since we built this bike, but I think it was something along the lines of 185 pieces of titanium, and it didn't need like 40% of that.
And where does the gas tank go?
I love that.
Oh, so you have 2 gallons, 1 gallon?
Gallon and a half, gallon.
Gallon and a half. All right, so you could end of the street. It's a nice ride. There's a gas station at the end of the street.
I rode it for a few minutes and didn't run out of gas.
Right.
You'll like the smell of the race fuel. The best part was the internet was blown away by this concept. And I mean that all the comments that came out were, "Where's the gas tank? This doesn't run. It doesn't have a gas tank." But it's clearly right there.
Well, you see, I mean, I like the art and the sign. It's like when you watch these crazy fashion shows in Paris and a woman walk down with some hat you couldn't possibly have on your head, but it inspires other design. And that's what this is. I mean, I like the inspiration here. Whether this is practical, the idea of a birdcage frame is extremely practical.
It's strong, it's well beyond what it needs to be, and of course it's still pretty. It makes it easy to tie down in the truck, I will say. I was
going to say, and also, but that would be, to do that as a factory way to build a frame would be ridiculously
cost prohibitive. I can't remember the math, but we did the math. It was something like 150 hours went into that frame.
Yeah.
You know, and even just I made it in a mock-up with welding wire first, and that took 3 days just with welding wire, tacking it all together and getting rough shapes. it was our welder really hated me, I think, for those few weeks.
I was going to say, now, using your computer model, did you know it wouldn't shimmy or shake, all of that just from the...
No, that part of it we knew because of Chris's Auerbach's great idea to use the telelever, and I mean that so much of that torsional load is brought to here.
Okay.
There's very little here. This is almost doing nothing. It's holding this in line,
right?
But it's not. There is zero wiggle. It just looks that way.
Because a car is so different. You know, I've had cars that go, whoa, 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 this front, okay. You get off the motorcycle, it's boom. You
can't do that.
It's not an option. You're just down.
Jay, it is, and I mean this 100%, it is deceptively high tech. And I mean that the best part about it, and for me, when we were designing and building it, we were talking about the fact that it doesn't look like it's going to work.
Right.
And the fact that no one thought it would work made it even better, and that it looks fragile. It's not fragile at all. It got dropped in the parking lot a few minutes ago. It's still together. It's still fine.
Now, how did BMW react when they saw it?
I got tears. And good tears.
Yeah.
Out of one of the head-ups at BMW, in fact. And yeah, they did. So this was launched the year before the launch of the motorcycle was supposed to come out, the factory bike, and all of the press was at the Hand-Built show, and BMW flew people in, and yeah, they loved it, and I was glad. But I will admit I was worried after the whole debacle with the supercharger that they weren't going to love it.
So is this a customer bike? Does it belong to BMW?
It's technically BMW's.
Oh, okay.
They own it.
Okay.
Yeah. It'll go back into their collection.
Well, it's you know, I'm fascinated with this period. The idea of having the throttle this way. I mean, it seems so awkward.
It's really not bad.
Like my dad, my dad was born in 1910. So whenever he would mimic a motorcycle, it was always this gesture. Because when he was a kid, you rode this way, which seems, it just seems so natural to roll on throttle.
I would think so.
But the roll on throttle really didn't come around until the 20. You know, I've got a couple of Bruffs over there that. It's a lever.
I know, I've ridden.
Yeah, you move that lever, which is, you know.
Well, my favorite part is that people can't fathom that you're doing the choke, you're doing the timing, you're doing the throttle, you're doing.
Right.
And I find the lever throttle to be better. The thumb throttle is super easy.
They are nice. And this is interesting, the aerodynamics part of this.
All made by hand and sculpted.
Which is something they didn't do in the day, but looks like they did in the day, didn't it?
They did it on the Henne bike, on the race bikes.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, the application is different, but yeah, there was very similar.
One disc in the rear.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And even that, that's custom as well. The master, I mean the caliper.
Oh yeah, and a very tiny master cylinder, very thin.
Yep. I wish I could do it easily without taking the motor out, but the most impressive part and bits are what's underneath here. To make this work with the direct injection and all the factory components that are part of the motor, along with a full custom fuel computer and the battery and all that hidden underneath that cover, isn't straightforward.
Wow.
A lot of time on the dyno to get it tuned.
Yeah, I mean, that's the real tricky part, to make something that looks so simple, but it's really obviously, well, I can just see the workmanship and the engineering that went into it. I mean, just to get all this linkage to work properly.
And there was some sorting that had to be done. I mean, there was weeks of sorting. Once we made it look like this, to make it ride, it took some time. The titanium pipes and
beautiful brazing here, and it's not distorted at all.
No, it didn't move much. We had a pretty strong jig set up to weld it together. The funny part was, like, I anodized this all. Have you ever anodized or seen anodized titanium?
Yeah.
How it's done?
Yeah.
It's really easy. It's quite simple. I did it in a cooler.
Yeah.
Like with electricity and electrolysis, and managed to, all these pieces were just anodized to look this way to give that effect. And then, of course, once you get heat into the titanium pipes, that's when they really start to look good.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a work of, I mean, it's really an art piece. I mean, it's fantastic that something that appears so heavy can be held up by what appears to be toothpicks.
By
literally.
nothing, right. There's nothing to it.
Yeah, I mean, pretty amazing.
So I was going to say that, you know, what Revival's evolved into since I met you in 2011 is we now specialize in supporting builders. And, you know, when I started then, and even that first time I came to see you, we were just kind of figuring things out and making it up as we went and trying to, you know, like, become better at what we did. And I think this represents a lot of hours spent and a lot of time and energy and learning.
Yeah, it's great.
But most importantly, what we've learned in this 10 years is that we sell parts to builders, mostly for electrical wiring and high-end applications and accessories, and encouraging people that are like me, that are just normal people that are enthusiasts, to do it. And I think that's one of the things that's missing. You and I have talked about this before, about the younger generation thinking this is rocket science, when in fact it's just hard-headed determination and confidence. And it, I don't know, I'm really proud of the team that we built this bike in 7 weeks.
And you're still in the same shop, right?
Same place.
Yeah.
It's gotten bigger.
Well, that's good. No, but maybe you're talking about moving some fans. Maybe we had this discussion.
Yeah.
Just stay where it's paid for. You own it. Relax.
I hear you. I hear your voice in my head quite a bit when it comes to that stuff.
But I'm glad you did, because I like that shop. There's history there. You know, I remember back in 11 we did this and this. And, you know, and after a while it becomes sort of an iconic place.
It has a feel to it. Unfortunately, you know, I do lease the building, and it cost about 10 times what it did back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, that and all my tools are heavy. You know, those lathes and mills, it's hard to move that stuff.
Exactly.
Your stuff's on wheels.
And we discussed this already. The hand shifter,
which is in the traditional style of how they would have done it, right? You know,
you know, I love a hand shift.
Yeah.
I got my hand shift Harley and my hand shift Indian. You know, and the Bruffs especially, where you
just snick right
in. You know, isn't that kind of? I have so many bikes where I'm doing that all the time. You know.
Well, foot shift is convenient.
Yeah.
Remember when we went to Coda and the Suzuki, and now how far foot shifting has come that you don't even have to touch the throttle. And
I know. We went down and we rode Suzukis at Circuit of America. Yeah. That was like the stupidest thing. I'm on the Suzuki, and I'm going down that straight. I look at the spiral. Oh, I'm doing 165. And then I went, there's a corner up there. I've never gone around a corner at 165. I'm thinking, what am I doing?
How old am I?
Yeah, I was going, well, this is crazy. I mean, yeah, that was interesting.
I mean, you were following, you were following a MotoGP champion.
I know, that was the most ridiculous. He just got on, okay, go ahead, you know. Yeah.
You know the way I tell that story?
What's that?
I started off with the second time I tried to kill Jay Leno.
That's right, that's right, that's right.
This is what happened.
Exactly. But it was just because you were, okay, let's open it up. All right, wow, look at that 165. There's a corner up there. I've never gone around a corner 165. Hey.
You did fine. You did great.
It was all right, but it just made me laugh. It just made me laugh. I thought, okay, this is really stupid.
I think you were
not even a practice lap.
I think you were thinking about the barbecue.
The barbecue was good.
Anyway, sorry.
Austin has the best barbecue. That's the best barbecue town. It's really good.
Yeah.
So let's see what
Plenty
else
of roasted meat.
Okay, we got. Now I notice you limited the number of spokes. Now, normally you'd think on a bike where it's heavy and you want to have a really laced wheel. Is that for aesthetic reasons only?
This is really what you just call a straight spoke.
Right.
And it's aesthetically, I think, pretty cool because we weren't going to put a front brake on it.
Right.
You know how spokes are interlaced and they go in two different directions?
Right.
So this one is done that way.
Right.
Because it has the brake. And so it has to be strong forward and reverse. This doesn't have to be strong.
And a straight spoke is stronger, isn't it?
Technically, but it's just not torsionally, right?
Right.
Not in both directions, right? Yeah. So it works just the same. It's like an old wooden spoke on half your early cars, but I think it looks more vintage, you know, except that it's 21-inch wheels. But the photos of this bike are really, you don't realize how large in the scale it really is. But
yeah, and I like it from this angle because you see the universal here.
And you see it spinning while it's riding. It's
and you
cool.
see the rear drive unit. And I know that's new, but it looks vintage. Maybe it's because you've done it in that
the inside story is that so this is rough casting, these pieces. When they sent it to us, that was the sandcast pre-prototype stuff. So it wasn't smooth factory stuff.
Okay.
So that took a team of guys a week to sand all of that rough stuff off to give it the smooth finish. I didn't anodize this. This is just bare aluminum.
Oh, okay.
But then the fasteners, you know, this is titanium. But to give it that more vintage look, otherwise it had like, you could tell it had been 3D printed, the casting, so it just didn't look right.
Let's fire it up, see what it sounds like.
You should be doing it, no? It's a matter of turning it on there, fuel pump in the tank. All of this.
I mean, Yes. Well, I mean, you can feel the torque throwing you to the side.
Crazy.
Yeah. Because this motor really smooths out. Once you get above 15 miles an hour, oh boy, it's like a turbine.
It really is.
Other than that, it's like like you're being punched in the face constantly.
And you see the way this thing's shaking, and that's the result of the fact that it weighs 300 pounds less.
Right.
And the way that Chris tuned this thing isn't necessarily to be the smooth, precise thing. It's meant to be a hot rod, and it is. I mean,
I wouldn't want to do that iron butt rally with that seat.
It's surprisingly comfortable. It's got a little give to it.
Yeah, it looks surprisingly comfortable. If that's comfortable, I'll be real surprised. Yeah.
It is the touring bike.
Yeah. And of course, you've got the Bonneville-style tires.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I like the disc wheel.
That was not simple, as you know, getting to build that out of hand and form.
Well, I remember back in the day, the wind would catch that rear and just move it around if you got crosswinds.
So my original plan was to take this land speed racing, and we may still, just under cover of darkness, perhaps from other people. But we. Well,
the engine is totally stock, right?
Internally, yes. Exactly. It's
and I don't imagine you could do much land speed. I mean, once that oil gets hot, there's no way to cool it. You don't have an oil cooler on it.
See, but that's a calculation of load as well. And because this doesn't weigh that much, because it's not going to be used for very long, you're not going to carry heat very long. The oil cooler is really for long distances, just to keep oil temps at a lower ambient temp or lower functional temperature. It wouldn't hurt the motor at all. It would be fine. Remember, there's so much oil air-cooled to it.
When I go down to that cemetery in Austin with your name on it, and the epitaph will say, I didn't think I needed an oil cooler. It'll just say that at the bottom.
When the engine locked up at 180?
It seemed cool at the time, or something like that.
If we go racing, I'll put one on there and call it.
Well, you know, I just like the creative mind. I like the thought process behind it. I like the thinking of it, and I like motorcycles as art. You know, for some reason, I don't like art cars. Right. Cars that they just paint on them, because that ruins what the design. You know, the designer wanted this car to be blue or red, or so when someone else comes and paints Andy Warhol stuff on it, or whatever, I don't like those. Right. But this I like, because there's so much creative thinking here. I mean, you know, just look at these wells. Look how beautifully this is done. And you say you did it in 7 weeks, huh?
We built it in 7 weeks.
God, I used to talk to a guy doing my bathroom. That's like 2 years now. So, yeah.
I don't lay tile.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, we sat on the design for over a year, but you know, it was waiting for the motorcycle and then having them completely can my idea. We had to change course. It's a good thing you didn't sit
on this for over a year, because you wouldn't be walking. But yeah. It's really comfortable.
It's really comfortable. It is.
It's like
softer than it appears.
It's like sitting on a maxi pad. Yeah.
So I was going to say, the one thing, I don't think a lot of people like to talk about this, because it comes off wrong, but I mean it sincerely. There's two things about designing a motorcycle versus designing a car. Right. And I'm into designing, and I'm into cars, you know, from way back. But when you build a car, you can hide every ugly piece underneath. I mean, my favorite car of yours is that right there.
Oh, the Duesenberg?
That Duesenberg is the prettiest thing here. And it is pretty because of what's on the outside, and because of all the detailed pieces. But you know, there's a lot of ugly pieces of that car that can be hidden under bodywork. Right. And when it comes to something like this, yes, we hid a lot of ugly pieces underneath this one cover, but there's a lot that has to go into that small package. And I think that that makes perfect sense to me, because to me, I always like motorcycles I can see through. Vincent, Harley, big Gold Star, you can look through and you can see in and around the fins and see where the air goes. You know, it's like opening the back of a watch. I mean, a motorcycle wears its all the functional parts on the outside.
On the outside,
and making that look cohesive and making that go together it's not science, it's art, right? And I think that although I really want to build a beautiful coachwork car someday, and I'm sure I will, it will be easier, some parts of it. It will take more hours, but it will be easier.
Well, the fun thing about this is you can look at it for 10, 15 minutes and see something different each time. You know, this sort of, lack of better, this pod, it just looks like something from the 30s. And of course, the Eric Feinhorn helmets here are really fascinating to me.
Well, BMW's only assignment was they wanted the engine to be the centerpiece. Right. And to me, check, right? Like, the engine is everything.
Oh yeah, it's the centerpiece.
You can see through this to see only the engine, and if your eyes pull back, you get to see the functional bits that are.
It's funny, because to me, when I look at the production bike, the engine looks too big. On this, even though the frame and everything is smaller, it seems appropriate for some reason. Probably because of the big tires.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Is the wheelbase the same?
No, it's quite a bit longer.
Yeah, the wheelbase, yeah, it was about 4 inches.
I changed all the proportions because I thought this was going to fit better.
Because here the engine looks, the right size. I think if you put a normal BMW twin in here, it would look like a moped in this frame. You know, if you think, people always think they can design something. I say, just draw a circle. You get an egg, or they get, most people can. Yeah, I know good designers, they can draw a perfect circle. You know, it's hard to do. And people don't realize how much work and effort goes into this, how much creativity. It's really impressive, Alan.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for bringing it here. Yeah. It's fun to see.
I wish we were going to go for a ride, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's, well, there's no place.
The third time I tried to kill Jay Leno.
Yeah.
He refused to let me kill him.
Really good. Yeah. But we'll got a shot of you driving it down the road.
That's fine.
That's what we'll do. Take a look.
Mm-hmm.